it's true in this environment. It's true at Sendinblue today. Every member of your executive team is both the custodian of part that they're responsible for, but more importantly, their essential goal is to make the company win, not just their department win. And when people understand that what's going to get the company closest to a win is to follow the priority that we've all agreed upon.
Today is Sendinblue's COO, Olivier Legrand. Sendinblue is the leading all-in-one digital marketing platform for small to medium-sized businesses. In his role, he is responsible for overseeing strategy, operations, go-to-market talent, and international growth. Before joining Sendinblue, Olivier was the VP and Managing Director of Asia Pacific and China at LinkedIn. And under his watch, LinkedIn's Asia Pacific doubled its membership and tripled in revenue. Prior to that, Olivier served as a Director of Marketing in Asia for the Wall Street Journal's Asia franchise, driving marketing and advertising initiatives across both print and online platforms. Olivier holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Paris School of Business. And Olivier, welcome to the Second in Command podcast.
Thanks for having me, Cameron. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm actually speaking to someone from Paris. I'm going to ask you when we're done some specific questions about some skiing, because I'm taking my boys to go skiing in France this year. So I might have some questions for you if you're a skier.
Oh, I'm your man. I love skiing.
Okay. Well, the Three Valleys is where we're probably going to go. So I'll ask you some questions when we're done.
Good pick. Very good pick.
So let's go. I'm going to ask you about Sendinblue in a few minutes, but can we just go backwards? And I want to talk mostly about your experience of working in the Asia Pacific area and what you were doing with LinkedIn, and then just ask you what you're seeing with that region right now. And so maybe just talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just came back to France after 19 years in Asia Pacific. So I spent 8 years in Hong Kong and about 11 years in Singapore. Hong Kong was the place where I started my first business, by the way. That was my journey into entrepreneurship. I started a company called Creasia over there, then worked for the Wall Street Journal. And then long story short, I did a lot of digital jobs for non-digital companies. I started in banking for a big French bank called BNP Paribas, then worked for myself in agency, then worked in publishing. And so I wanted to be working for a pure player. That's when I came across LinkedIn at the very early days of the business in Asia Pacific. So joined LinkedIn in 2012. Funny enough, LinkedIn at the time was pretty much the size that Sendinblue is today. It's about 600 people and about 100 million AR. So did the journey from 100 million to 10 billion with LinkedIn, and all of that from Asia. What can I say about Asia? I mean, an incredible region, very, very diverse. You know, when your region goes from Australia to India, from Japan to China, you have to learn that Asia is not one market or one region. It's a multitude of markets. And you spend a lot of time, especially in, global companies. I work for LinkedIn, which is a Silicon Valley-based company. You spend a lot of time educating about the fact that you don't have a region, but you actually have a portfolio of markets. And I used to think about that portfolio in the form of, core, venture, and strategic, and saying, okay, my core markets are Australia and say Singapore, because a lot of the behaviors on the LinkedIn platform back then looked a lot like what you would see, for example, in the UK or in the US. And then,
Sure.
I would say strategic market for me, for example, where India, for the longest time, and then other parts of Southeast Asia, I would say, outside of Singapore, particularly Indonesia, because there we had both a strong product market fit, but different kinds of challenge when it came to monetization. The type of members we're acquiring were different. The type of customers we're servicing were different. And then I had a bunch of venture markets, which was typically Japan and China, which were the hard ones, where the product market fit was complex, the monetization piece wasn't straightforward. And oftentimes this piece required for us to think about product. And when you build a global business on technology, especially a global software business, we all want to build a product that's as ubiquitous as possible, that everybody can use pretty much in the same way everywhere in the world. And the more you can achieve that, the better it is for your ability to scale the business. But sometimes you come across markets that have very unique, whether it's business requirements, if you think about China, or cultural requirement, if you think about markets like Japan, for example, or even India. And that forces you to think about your value proposition slightly differently. And so that's sort of what I've learned during those 20 years in Asia, is to focus on the core and the things that are common, because I think although across the world, whenever you talk to your team, and I have the same here at Sendinblue, when you go to Germany, people tell you, oh, it's different here in Germany, and then you go to India and they tell you it's different here in India, and it's very true. But there's many things that are common. You know, a business is a business. You need to make more money than you spend. Like there's a bunch of foundational things that are common, but there's also sometimes the need to listen and understand how you can do better and serve better the audiences that are in this market, and what differentiate them from others.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I was just speaking to my wife the other day, where we've been to 34 countries together in the last 4 years. I've been to 62 countries, 64 countries, something like that now.
How did you do this during COVID? Like, it's crazy.
We figured it out. But what was interesting is we were driving on a highway. Where the heck were we? I don't remember. Where were we before Scotland? Anyway, we were driving, and I said, it just seems like, oh, we were in Poland. I said, so much of what we're seeing in Poland is the same as North America, and yet it is so completely different. Like it looks at times like you could be in any North American city. I'm from Canada, but then culturally it can be so different. What I'm curious about is, how do you operate the business with so many of these distinct markets, these 3 distinct types of markets you mentioned? Do you operate with very different plans for each market, or very different teams for each market? How do you keep them focused when one group is working in one direction, one is different, you know, in a completely different direction?
Yeah, it's a bit what I meant when I talked about this, you know, core, strategic, and venture applied to the way we looked at the markets. And so it was sort of a proxy to maturity and to you know, product market fit, and to ability to monetize. But we also had a similar approach of our activities through a core, strategic, and venture. And the core things were the things that were, to my earlier point, quite ubiquitous, that were working across multiple markets and from which we're getting the most leverage. And on this, you could really line up your team and focus on execution, you know, and really be basically going through a playbook, like taking a playbook that you've done somewhere else and take it and roll it out and apply that playbook. And so that allowed to have a lot of consistency across your team everywhere. And then you get into your strategic and venture bets within those markets. And it's a bit like you're managing your money. Like, you don't put everything on the venture, you put some on the things that are safer bets. And there, really what you need is an incredible team. It's, you know, I spent 19 years in Asia. If I were to tell you that I'm an expert in India, Japan, and China, I'd be stupid. Like, you know, even after 20 years, you just keep learning. But you do lean on people whose culture is China, whose country is China, who have been doing business there and who lived and grew up in China, and people that have done the same in India and Indonesia. And so you have to listen really, you have to hire very well, very smart people that are very aligned with your mission, your vision, the culture you want to build, because they're going to be your champions in these markets. And you have to work with them. And a lot of part of working with them is to listen to them, to hear them talk about, you know, what's different and what's specific, and how they think you can crack the market. And then your job is to parse through all this and prioritize and decide what is it that you're not going to do and what is it that you're going to pursue, because you don't want to run after every opportunity in the same way. So a lot of prioritization, a great team, focus.
Yeah, and that was what I was really going to ask about when you mentioned leverage. I'm curious as to how you decide what your ROI or what your decision around that leverage is going to be. You know, we have those resources of people, time, and money, and how to get the highest ROI off those. And you mentioned some of it has to be strategic allocation. How do you prioritize, or how do you decide? And then how do you also let the people down, or let the departments down that know their idea isn't getting used, or it's not getting used now? Like, how do you say no without killing the spirit and the energy when we've become this kind of kumbaya group hug that, we don't want to hurt people's feelings?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. I'll use the proxy we use at LinkedIn. It's hard when you're in a large Silicon Valley company. You optimize a lot for the tools and the features that are going to be used by the maximum number of people. And so if you look at some of the venture bets we did, they were essentially in market that has huge TAM. Like if you look at China, if you look at India, if you look at Japan, those were very big markets and very big opportunity. And so there's a moment where you're looking at, okay, I'm going to do some things slightly differently, or we're going to try to approach our value proposition slightly differently, but it's worth it because the amount of opportunity that we're going to unlock at the back of this initiatives is worth the venture bet.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the education and a lot of the work that I was doing with our leadership team, Jeff Winter and the rest of the team was around building those cases and saying, okay, we're asking here to do something in a slightly different way. But we're not running every opportunity equally. We've done our homework, and here is the opportunity that's ahead of us. Can we do it? Yes or no? And this happens on the multi-year process. And so 1 year India makes the cut, and then 2 years later China makes the cut, because as you know, we live in a finite world from a resource perspective. There's so many engineering man hours that you have. There's so many go-to-market people. Even if you're a very well-resourced company, and if you hire really fast, it takes time to hire people, ramp them up, and the throughput is the throughput. Like you can't go further. So it's all about prioritization. And so to answer your question on how you don't ruin it for everybody, like I had those conversations so many times with my team in Asia, because when you're the guy in Japan, day in, day out, you're breathing the Japan opportunity, and you see it in front of you. You see all these things that you could be doing, and basically you come and you fight for them, and sometimes you get them, and sometimes you don't. And so you're that you're potentially going to disappoint a portion of your team is going to be disappointed because their projects aren't going to make the cut. What we did is we were extremely transparent about the process. We're saying, hey, from the beginning, know that we're not going to be able to do everything. We're exploring all of it, and here's the choice that we've made, and here's why we've made those choices. And by the way, you're a shareholder of the company, and your incentive is for the company to win, not just Japan to win. And I think you need to build a leadership team, and it's true in this environment. It's true at Sendinblue today. Every member of your executive team is both the custodian of the part that they're responsible for, but more importantly, their essential goal is to make the company win, not just their department win. And when people understand that what's going to get the company closest to a win is to, follow the priority that we've all agreed upon, they'll wait. And the good news is, 6 months later, a year later, they'll get a win, and they'll be able to, address one of those pain points that they've seen and that's been, hurting them like in their guts, because they know we could do better for their customers. And so it's funny. I had this conversation with our German country manager recently, and my point to him was like, never give up. Like, you're asking for these things that you believe and will improve the experience of your German or DACH, users. And of course, we're not always going to be in a position to say yes, but never get tired of fighting on behalf of the customers you represent, because you're doing your job when you're doing this. And even if it's not a win at every fight, it's okay. You got to be mature about it. You got to understand that you're here for the team to win and not just your subset of the team. Like, it's a system subsystem conversation, basically. Like you work for the system and you're responsible for a subsystem. How do you balance, your position there so that you optimize somehow for your subsystem, or you inform and you create and you give the information to the team that's going to make the arbitrage. At the end of the day, the best job you can do is to make sure that you represent as fairly and as accurately as possible the opportunity that sits in your market, so it can be arbitraged in the best way possible, so that the best decision can be taken for the system for the company.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, I want you to go back and just tell us a little bit about Sendinblue. Like, well, what does the company do? Who is Sendinblue? And then I want to find out why the heck you would leave a huge company like a LinkedIn to join not a small company. Like you said, I think you're at about 600 employees now, but why would you have left such a huge organization to go to more of a mid-sized organization now? What grabbed you?
Sure. So Sendinblue, as you said, is a one-stop shop for digital marketing, CRM, basically all channels that small and medium businesses need to communicate to their customers. And our vision is to really democratize access to digital tools and technology that for the longest time were made available to larger organizations. And when I say democratize, I mean, we want to make them accessible in all forms, accessible both from a usability perspective. We want to develop like tools that are simple to use, that very small businesses can use and can onboard it on quickly, and that are also affordable to use, so that it's really something that fits into the unit economics of small businesses. And so now we're serving like 300,000 customers across 170 countries. The business is 85% of our business is self-served. We're building a really solid mid-market and enterprise component as well. Some of our customers are graduating to be bigger, but really we grew from the ground up. And Armand's vision was our CEO. He started the company 10 years ago in India, and then came back to France. He's French. Was really this democratization, was this idea of like empowering the small guys so that they can compete. And this has not changed. Like the true north is there. We're going to continue to do this. We just increased the fashion that we're doing this. Like we're doing this for email marketing, but also for SMS marketing, push notifications, CRM, et cetera, et cetera. And many of those new features, by the way, happened through also a bunch of acquisition that the company has done.
Interesting. Okay. So, and then for you, what was it that grabbed you? What was it that you
and why? Yeah, why? So, incredible decade at LinkedIn, absolutely life-changing organization. I learned so much there. But first of all, when you're 10 years into an organization, you get comfortable, and I think I got to that place where I wanted to get outside that comfort zone that LinkedIn had become for me. It wasn't always a comfort zone. I got stretched and pulled in so many ways in this organization. But after a decade, when you're running a region, I felt wanted to get a stretch. And when I started to reflect back on, okay, what was the moment in the life of the company that I really enjoyed the most? I think that moment where you've established a product market fit, which is the case for Sendinblue, when you have this amount of customers, and where you're starting to hit like a certain level of velocity, and you're looking at a very large total addressable market, which is our case. This moment of scaling is really one that I found super interesting and super exciting. And so that's kind of the energy I wanted to find. And after 19 years in Asia, so I decided to leave LinkedIn. I took a 10-11 months break, which was amazing, and spent quite a bit of time in France because we weren't able to come back during COVID. Asia was pretty closed, as you probably know. And when the time to look for a new opportunity came up, with my wife and my kids, the question was like, okay, do I look again for another round of like 5, 6, 7 years in Asia, or is it time to look in the direction of Europe and get closer to home? Although I can call Asia home in many ways. I called Asia home for a long time. And this is when I came across Sendinblue. I met Armand, and I was really interested with the stage the company's at, that moment of velocity, that moment of strong product market fit, and that moment where the organization, was big and cross-border, like 600 people in North America, all over Europe, with people in Paris, in Berlin, in Seattle, in Toronto, in Noida, India. And so there's a whole set of new complexities on how to scale the foundation of a company like that was really really attractive to me. And of course, the vision and the mission of the company, this idea of like helping the little guys compete, is something that I like.
So I've always been nervous about hiring somebody from a big organization, big corporate, and bringing them into a not entrepreneurial. So I guess you're really not entrepreneurial anymore. You are more that mid-sized organization. But what do you think that you had to do, or what did you do to make sure that that transition was smooth for you to move into more of a leaner, faster, organization than LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think
Or
what
am I
I'd say
wrong?
is,
Maybe LinkedIn was more entrepreneurial because it was tech too.
so LinkedIn was very entrepreneurial for a very long time. The other thing is LinkedIn continued to grow at a really fast pace at massive scale. When you're starting to grow, when you have a multi-billion-dollar, business that's growing at 45% year over year, it's a very different experience that the same size business that's flattish or growing in like low teens. And so that's sort of really what was impressive and interesting at LinkedIn in terms of the challenges that it was bringing that look a lot, like what we're living here, which is, the business is growing 40+%, not at a multi-billion-dollar scale, but that's our objective. Like we want to 10x the business from 100 to a billion in revenue, and for that you need to continue to grow at scale. That's really important. In terms of the transition, I'm 6 months into the business, so I don't want to be presumptuous that I am fully transitioned as well. But I felt I had to, I how could I say that? The first day, interesting enough, though, we decided to do business together, and I joined Sendinblue, and I started early April. And I remember that first day when I, left my place in Paris, took the tube, and went to Sendinblue. Although I had, interviews with a lot of people, I'd been to the office a bunch of times and so on. I was very nervous. I was like, oh, what is it that I'm going to find? How different is it going to be from what I've experienced for the past decade, or even the past like 3 to 5 years? And one thing that I was really worried about was, am I going to get into a very French office and a very French environment and so on? And so what I'd say is the culture I found, the team I found, the work environment I found here was a lot more familiar than I would have expected. Like the Sendinblue office in Paris, you hear like people speaking English, Italian, Spanish. Every meeting I was in was conducted in English. Every Notion, documentation, Slack, everything's happening in English. So the company was already, even before I came in, like very international in nature because of, how the company was built over time, because of the nature of our customers. You adapt as well to the customer you serve. And so what I'd say is it made it a lot easier for me to actually come in and feel at home from day one.
That actually led to my next question, which was, what was your first kind of 90 days like, or even maybe give us the first 3 months in kind of three segments? What was month one? What was month two? What was month three? What did you do, focus on, et cetera? What did you avoid doing?
Yeah, so first part was a lot of listening. Really, trying to what I was trying to avoid is to assume that I understood the business before being in, and sometimes you tend to oversimplify businesses. And I have to say, I'm glad I did this, because the Sendinblue business is actually quite complex, because companies that have cracked SMB acquisition in the SaaS world, you don't have that many. Most SaaS companies are going for the higher end customers because that's where it aligns better with their cost of sales. We crack like acquiring at scale very small businesses on a self-serve platform. And so, the first part was listening, getting to know the team, understand the talent, like the people that were in there, understand the energy that was in there. The second phase was to try to identify, I don't want to say quick wins, because that's not really what they are, but relatively obvious places of opportunity. And so one of the things that I realized quickly is, as the company grew, there was an appetite for more structure. like in every conversation I was having with the marketing, with the sales team, with the customer experience team, with our product team, there's this moment where like everybody was saying, well, like we have a lot of things going on at the same time, and it's getting more complex. And so there was a bit of a push or a pull toward like a bit more process and a bit more structure, which was really interesting. And for me, the second phase was to identify those areas of opportunity. So I think for us, we have a massive area of opportunity in North America, for example. It's about 20-25% of our business. It could be way bigger. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, that should be super interesting. We have a very high performing mid-market and enterprise team, which was a surprise for me and a good surprise. And I started to think, oh, that's kind of cool when you're developing tools for the small guys, when the big guys are starting to buy it. Like it kind of means that you're doing good on your mission and vision. So you're actually democratizing and bringing tools that allow the small guys to compete and the small businesses. I shouldn't say the small guys. The small businesses. They're proper businesses. They're real businesses. And to see that bigger companies are sometimes gravitating toward that simplicity, that efficiency, that cost efficiency as well, and are buying your solution. And so one of my first reflections to Alma was like, when something's doing well on a company, I'm always wondering how you can push that further, like, put gas on the fire, basically. And so, and how do you make space in a company that has such a strong self-serve DNA for a proper go-to-market team that is going to be speaking to bigger customers and service them and so on. So bring some of that. So I think that's one of our opportunity. It's something that we can pursue going forward.
I wanted to ask you about that a little bit, about the go-to-market stuff, but specifically even more on the sales and marketing side. I'm curious, you're really a marketing SaaS business, not so much a marketing agency, but a SaaS marketing. What percentage of revenue does Sendinblue spend on sales and marketing?
Oh, it's a big portion. I mean, performance marketing is the big engine. Like for us, if you think about a business like ours, like marketing is sales for the self-serve business, and sales is sales for the enterprise business. Like this is how we grow. This is how we bring in and acquire small companies and bring them to the platform, onboard them to the platform, and have them start using. So marketing is a big chunk of our investment. I don't have the percentage top of mind, but marketing acquisition is really important in a business like ours. If you want to build a scalable, high velocity business like the one we have, it's an important growth engine, a very important growth engine.
And are you working with any outside marketing agencies, or are you doing it all in-house? Are you at this?
No, all in-house. All in-house.
Interesting.
And we do the whole performance marketing, SEO, affiliation, partnership, we also connect through plugins with all the ecosystem, from Shopify to Presta and other, or the web editors, etc. So we have to be on all those marketplaces and plugged in. Our customers can have needs of classic email marketing needs or SMS marketing needs, but we also have, of course, more and more with COVID, of our customers that started to build a presence on e-commerce, and so which has been driving some of our M&A as well, and some of our acquisition.
Okay, how many companies have you acquired, and what is your focus around M&A? And then I guess part to that would be, what percentage of your growth is going to be focused on M&A versus organic?
Yeah, so we've acquired 6 or 7 companies. So the first acquisition was Newsletter2Go, which was a big German competitor of ours. So really buying a company that was doing that we're doing. Since then, we bought Pushal, Metrilo, Meatfox recently. So a number of companies, and they are a lot of the. So there's been 1 or 2 acquisitions that were in the core business. The others were really to bring in features. So if you think about Pushal, it's all about push notification in the Shopify ecosystem. If you think about Metrilo, It's really about e-commerce analytics and being able to provide this to our users that are starting to build their e-commerce presence. If you think about MeetFox, it's about scheduling and how when you run a small business, at some point you want to be able to create, like, as part of your CRM, easy ways to schedule time with a customer success person or a salesperson. So it's really addition. And I think that's one of the things that I've appreciated at Sendinblue. And I've told Armand is, I think we're very pragmatic from the build versus buy perspective. I worked in a lot of, like, if you think about most Silicon Valley tech company, are build company first. You know, you work with engineers that are really smart and that tend to think that
they want to build stuff.
They can build anything and they want to build stuff. And sometimes you point them at something and you say, hey, look, like this thing we want to build, like somebody's already done it.
It's already smart. There. Like, why are we building a car? There's a car right outside for sale.
Exactly. So how about we bring these guys in and, you know, like maybe their business standalone is not as strong, but their business as part of us, you know, is finding a lot of leverage. And so coming from Silicon Valley companies, there's this strong DNA and strong, like, so default toward build versus buy, although LinkedIn has done a number of great acquisitions. So, you know, it's not that restrictive. I find that here, Armand and our tech team, a lot more pragmatic about this and recognize that, you know, CRM is something that not everybody knows how to do. And yes, you can learn, but, you know, if you can bring in people that are really good at it and understand it deeply, they'll add up to the opportunity that e-commerce and, you know, Shopify, Presta ecosystem are interesting, but they have their own complexities, and some people are really fluent in them and know how to you know, leverage them in the most efficient manner. How about we bring in people like that? And typically Shashank, who's the CEO of Pushal, is amazing at that, and he's bringing a lot to our exec team by bringing that expertise and a lot more, to be honest. I don't want to reduce it to this.
I have a couple of questions, again, still on the transition, and then I want to go back into talk about Asia Pacific for a second. On the transition, just briefly, how long does it actually take, do you think, to feel like you now are in place and you know, the transition is over, you're kind of there and you're solid? And then secondly, what can you teach us about when a seasoned COO is hired to come into an organization that already is there and exists, and you've got people that might have been vying for the job, or people that are now, you know, that have been there for years that are now reporting to you? Any lessons that you can give us around that as well?
Yeah, in terms of the time to get your fit under you, I think it's pretty much now. I would say I'm like 5 months old, and I'm starting to feel that way for like, I would say, 3 weeks to a month maybe, where you start to have clarity on what is it you want to work on, what are your OKRs. You start to have a bunch of quick wins under your belt. Like, you know, like this is the moment where you start to know the people as well. I mean, I should have started there. Like, you start to feel a part of the team, know the people, understand their side of the equation, not just have a one-sided view of the challenges that are in front of you. So I would say, you know, it's a good, like, I think 3 to 6 months all in to get fully situated. Yeah. You know, some people might be faster than I am, but that's sort of like,
that's what it feels to me,
has been my journey. In terms of coming into the organization, I think it varies from one organization to the other, but here, first of all, I interviewed with pretty much every single one of those people, so they had a point of view to give on whether I could be a good fit or not. I'm pretty sure through the process, even though they were probably not all of them were the final decision makers, but they played a part in bringing this in. The general sentiment I've had at Sendinblue is, you know, there's so much to achieve that they want to win, and I think a lot of what I felt from, not just from you know, my team, the people that I work with, or my peers, but a lot of them were actually excited to see that the company was able to bring in someone with the background in a bigger organization like LinkedIn. I think there was a bit of pride as well in saying, okay, well, we're capable of getting talent like that, and I think that's a great sign of culture. Like, you know,
Huge.
companies that are able to bring in strong talent and see the value in this, and see the value of building a winning team is incredible. And so I have a document which is sort of like my first 100 days thoughts and so on, and I feel what we've had over the last 4 months is both a combination of a really solid like historical team, like our CRO, our CPO, our CEO, of course, like a lot of people that have been here a long time. But we also, I came in, but we have a new CTO that just came in. We have a new chief people officer, Laura, that just came in. That is amazing, and so this ability to build that team has been incredibly encouraging for me, and I think it's been a very strong signal to the marketplace and to the team.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done a really, really good job with the transition, and I love that whole point of, you know, it's a bit of a badge of honor when they can realize they are able to now hire these people. That's a huge sign for the organization. It's kind of an exciting stage. I know that this is going to be an impossible question to answer, but
it's a good
what
start.
are kind of like 1 or 2 lessons you can teach us about working? You know, what are they doing better in Asia Pacific that North American or European companies can learn from? You know, what are they doing better in India? What are they doing better in China? What are they doing better in, maybe pick something from each of the 3 types of areas you talked about in the APAC.
Oh man, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
I think what I love about, especially the emerging part of Asia, I would say India, China to a certain extent. I don't know if I would put it. It's the scrappiness, like that. Like the people are hardworking, and they can be scrappy. They try every angle. Like really, very very strong resilience and scrappiness, I would say. Which I think comes from they are bringing the environment in which you grow up, the opportunities that are presented to you. The moment, if you think about Europe or the US or we generally have a pretty sweet life. Access to school, access to many things is taken for granted, and in some parts of Asia it's not. And I think it creates a grit and a scrappiness in people that I think is a superpower.
Okay,
does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. The scrappiness is really intriguing for sure. All right, I want you to go back to, you mentioned that you were hitting this kind of flat period at LinkedIn and you wanted to be challenged again. So now that you're back into this next organization, this next role for yourself, where are you growing? What are you focusing on in terms of your skill set to continue to grow? Because I think we always are.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm learning a ton. I'm challenged a ton. I think so. I'm growing a ton and really understanding and getting into the details of the business and of what everybody in my team is doing. Like, I feel that during my entire career, I've had the belief that I needed to hire people that were better than me or what they're doing. Like, I do not need to be a better marketer than our CMO. I don't need to be a better seller than our sales head, nor being a good customer experience person to lead the person that leads customer experience. But I do need to have a base understanding of what their day-to-day business is, and so that I can be helpful, so that I can coach them, so that I can help them look in a direction that because they're day in, day out in it, they might not. And so I in LinkedIn, because I grew with the business, I felt like that baseline sort of grew with me. Here, I need to sort of fast forward that learning, and it's kind of a back to school, and that's one of the things that, for example, Armo, our CEO, has built this business brick by brick for the last decade, and the level of instincts, the level of hunch and understanding that he has for the business, that's really situated in so many repetition situations that he's seen leading, like A means B means C. that's the part that I find super challenging. I lean a lot on him at the moment, on his instincts, and sort of my role is also to go and like check the data and try to find like if those instincts can be converted into actual action that will make the business better. But I really want to build more and more of my own hunches. And so for now, my own instincts are more anchored in external experience and the fact that I'm new to the business and that I have a new angle to it. I want to add to it depth and knowledge onto it, and I think that's going to take time. The other part is in a company our size is the breadth. Like, I mean, you know, I'm always, you know, it's the CEO, so he obviously has an overview on everything, but really focuses his time on tech and product, and I'm more on the go-to-market and customer and HR side of things. So I like, you know, revenue, marketing, customer care, HR, operations. But you know, everything is sort of like interconnected and intertwined, and so how our product and engineering teams. So really, the variety of challenges that are coming our way over the course of a day is incredibly fast, and there's a lot to learn in this environment.
What you touched on earlier was about how you don't need to be as good as the people reporting to you in their functional area, but you need to understand it enough to be able to coach them and develop them and support them. I think that's very unique for the COO and the CEO. Is how do we, because you know, the head of marketing could almost be the head of marketing for any organization. The head of IT can almost be the head of IT. Like they're very, for the most part, fairly plug and play. But the COO is so different because you have to understand the whole organization and all the different functional areas and be really good at the stuff the CEO doesn't want to work on. How do you get good at that stuff? Is it just by osmosis? Is it by being around it? Are you just a quick learner, or are you?
Well, you know, I'm relatively new at being a COO, so I don't know that I've nailed it already. I think there are a few things though that set you up for success, and I think one thing that attracted me as well to Sendinblue is how complementary Armand and I are in terms of, you know, our past experiences, our personalities. Like we're very different persons, and I think a lot of the opportunity come from that complementarity, from him being incredibly good at things that I can absolutely grow toward, and me having a certain experience in some areas. Armand, you know, came out of school and started this company, and it's you know, it was almost home run for the beginning. Of course, there was a journey to get to where he is today, and so there's been some difficult times, I'm sure, but he's been basically investing his, you know, life and blood in this organization. I worked overseas, worked in different industries, and so it's the complementarity piece I think is extremely important.
You mentioned something to me before we started, which was interesting, and then I want to wrap up with a final question. But you said that most of your customers are the kind of real businesses. They're not all just venture backed. That they're real businesses that make, you know, they have real P&Ls, and so your customer base is really solid, even though we're in this kind of bit of a weird time right now with the economy, with inflation and potential recession. Are you guys venture backed, or are you?
Yeah, we are. We raised, our last round was at the end of 21, November 21. We raised $160 million dollars, and so we're backed both by BPI, which is the French you know, fund, like the foreign investment fund, and also a venture capitalist firm called Partech and a fund called Bridgepoint. And so we're absolutely venture backed, but we are, you know, I repeat what I said. If you look at our customers, they're real businesses, not in the sense that venture backed businesses aren't real, but you know, we're not a company that's built a SaaS product that we're selling to other startups. We're a company that was built to help mom and pops businesses and medium-sized businesses and now bigger businesses start using the digital tools they need to be successful. And of course, there are some startups in there, and they are awesome, and we love having them as customers. But we have yoga teachers, we have like restaurant chains, we have coaches, we have a lot of different shapes and forms of companies, basically. And I think that's a driver of resilience for our business. Those businesses have been around for a very long time. They're able to adapt really quickly. And one thing that we do that I think they will always need to do is we help them speak to their own customers. And you can think about recession, you can think about inflation. The last thing you're going to be that you should stop doing if you're running a business is engaging with your customers, is having a conversation with them, is telling them what you can do to help them navigate through this. And I think we do that with our own customers. We help them navigate. We try to understand their reality in this new world. We're an affordable solution as well, and we want to continue to be that. And we want to help them maintain that connection with their own customers.
Well, I'll tell you, you're certainly the cool kids on the block right now, because I did a post on social media recently asking, what kind of company should we look for email automation and SMS marketing, and it was Sendinblue, someone else, Sendinblue, someone, like it was
awesome.
two or 3 to 1. Yeah. From a fairly savvy group of entrepreneurs from the Young Presidents Organization and Entrepreneurs Organization, a very good group. And I was surprised because I hadn't heard of you yet, but boy, you were everywhere. I want to go back, last question, to the 21 or 22-year-old Olivier Legrand. You're just starting off in your business career. What advice would you give yourself back then that you know to be true today?
Oh yeah, that's a question that I've been asked before, and I always give the same answer. And it's don't shy away from complexity. I've worked with new graduates in different like development programs we've had at LinkedIn and other companies and here. And that's an experience, a personal experience from when you start work. There's always that moment where you have a choice of a bunch of projects. You could do this or you could do that. And one of those projects looks really hard, and another bunch looks like pretty easy. And my advice is go toward the hard one. There's a couple of reasons for that. Like there's science behind this. First of all, if you fail, nobody's gonna be surprised because you picked the hard one. And if it's been on that table for a long time, it's probably because a bunch of people failed before you. And so the expectations are different. However you look at it, you're gonna learn a ton of things about the business, because in complexity, there's always learning, there's always growth. And you'll have a depth of understanding and a view of the opportunity, the business, that will be stronger than anyone else's. And if you crack it, you're gonna roll, and it's gonna be amazing. So it feels like a no-brainer to me. And I know that sometimes as humans we're like, oh well, this is easy stuff I could do. Like, why don't I pick that one? It looks fun and easy. But especially when you're early in your career, go for the hard stuff.
I love it. That's cool advice. Olivier Legrand, the COO for Sendinblue. Thank you so much for sharing with us on the Second in Command podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate the time today.
Whether it's sales or being a CRO or being a gamer, it's really all about resource management and numbers and understanding the levers you can pull to get outcomes. It really does boil down to building that strategy and understanding how to influence people.